minto baba. Abo minto Abo minto baba. Abo minto. Baito. We are about to start. Karibuni sana. Wageni wetu wenye wako nje. Karibuni sana. We are about to start. Karibu kuanza. Tiro borabu. Abo minto. University ya ito. Ero no mogo. Yonyo minto. Ega kino muya. Erwa kabwate. Ike charoni. Baito ni sana ole ingwe kora hinko misomutwe amakera oroke baba karibu ni sana wageni wetu amakera oroke abageni baito baba abageni baito herondero baba herondero baito herondero baba herondero baba ingwe kora na kingwe kora aba murabaito murabaito usiiseito unibaito abageni baito karibuni sana baito our visitors karibuni sana we appreciate kamo minto wale tiro borabu we appreciate you being with us wale tiro borabu karibuni sana minto tata thank you kamo minto abageni baito karibuni baito karibuni baito baba karibuni baito karibuni haji karibuni ole karibuni haji karibuni those ones who are outside karibuni tafadhali tuingie ndani there is enough space inside karibuni karibuni kisemi tata okini kisemi welcome kitabu welcome minte walikiri kitabu nakingwe kora tata nakingwe kora today is our celebration araka tene leo tunafurahia araka tene nango it's a day of celebration enjoyment wale tiro borabu wale tiro borabu karibuni urabeso mi those who are outside welcome tata welcome tiro kitabu tato mi comments wageni wetu wamefika kama Johnny thank you minto enteropi mete data enteropi mete okini kisemi abaga kabaito usi seito umuranto bwate chonyo minto oso mete bokomu kama ngai wacha kama tini nangu kama ngai wacha indi yana tata indi yana okini kisemi tata ore tu bwantani amo minto karibuni today is a day of celebration amo minto baito we are adding to the body of knowledge ore haji bosongo yaito umuranto bwate amo minto chunyo minto amo minto Marora marekaje, mareke mizuguti, marora magokaje, magoke mizuguti, marora maguraje, maguri mizuguti, kamo minto, ngindu wanjiti, kakitu wanjiti, abo minto, baito. Thank you. Ayi, amurambare zeito. Murambare zeito muromo som olikire ketabu ya tokonye akama tokonye robesa tokonye baito obe abo minto na kingwe kora. All right, thank you my DJ, thank you so much. DJ huyo kwa majina ni Mombinya Jared, makofi kwake tafadhali. A round of applause for him. He's one of our local musicians who has grown with this university for a very long time, and we appreciate the time that he keeps giving us. Whenever he comes to our functions, he never fails to put a smile on our face. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen who are in the room. Those of us who are following online as well, we appreciate you being here. We have friends
following from different places. We'll be hearing about them. We want to commence this ceremony this afternoon. It's a good day, and we want to go before the Lord to commit this day as we start. May I call Dr. Atebe to lead us in a word of prayer, and then we can formally start.
Shall we be upstanding for prayer, please? Our God and our Father in heaven, we come before your throne of grace this afternoon with thanksgiving. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the blessing of leadership, for the blessing of wisdom, for the blessing of knowledge. And dear God, as we have come this afternoon, we thank you for the wonderful blessings that you have bestowed upon our Vice Chancellor, Professor John Akama, even to be able to give us an inspiration that you have given him for the current generation and the generations to come. That, dear Lord, to make us realize that we are all your children, despite the circumstances that we find ourselves in, you will uphold each and every one of us with the right hand of your righteousness. And dear God, the destiny that you have put before each and every one of us cannot be deterred by circumstances or by anybody. For you have ordained it to happen to each one of us. Heavenly Father, for this program we have this afternoon, we pray that your grace, Almighty God, shall be upon us. Lead us from the beginning to the end. May this occasion be a blessing unto us and to our families and to this institution and unto humanity in general. That, dear Lord, even the book that we are going to have launched today may be a blessing unto those who will read it and their families. We surrender ourselves unto you that you may protect each and every one of us from the marauding diseases. The Lord, you will continue to preserve us and even prepare us for your kingdom, for we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you all.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Today is a wonderful occasion. We are adding to the body of knowledge with a very important addition, Undeterred. Even the prayers as Dr. was praying, he said that we are asking for blessings that are not deterred from the Lord, and we know we are going to get there. We want to start this day with a nice video that we are going to watch to open this ceremony officially. So I'd like to request my colleague at the technical desk to just give us the journey. We are looking at a journey of one man who has touched our lives in different ways. However small, however big, he has been able to touch us in different ways, and we've been able to reach and be the people we are today somehow because of him. And it's important to reflect a little bit on where he has come from. And in this book today, as we'll be hearing, and then later on, as we are going to also be reading it, for those of us who already had the copy, we are going to read about it and understand what makes somebody that person. So my technical person would like you to take it away as we watch a quick introduction to open this session.
Professor John Akama welcomes you to the launch of his book, Undeterred, a rural boy's journey to the pinnacle of academia.
That is the reason we are here today, to look at a work of art, a marvel and an inspiration that probably will inspire us one way or another. I want to move forward directly to the program and invite Dr. Kenanda for a little bit of an opening note to guide us as we start this session, and then we go directly into the word of the day, what brought us here, and learn about Undeterred, a rural boy's journey into the pinnacle of academia.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, first I would like to thank each and every one of you for being with us here today. We are indeed excited for joining us in this very important event. Before we get started, allow me to appreciate the presence of our leaders who are with us here for finding time to be with us. We have Professor Mwebi Monari, who is our keynote speaker today. We want to welcome you in a very special way. The others, Professor John S. Akama, and the journalist, Mr. Joshua Araka. The publisher, I hope Dr. Nyanchama is with us. The DVC, acting DVC who is around, Professor Anakaro Standi. The registrars that are around, the deputy registrars, deans, you can see Dr. Barasa and the others. CODs, I want to say it is a great pleasure to have you here. Now you have watched the video, and I want to say that today's gathering, our focus is on the launch of a book entitled Undeterred, and is about a rural boy born in a rural setting that was able to navigate and wade through tough, extreme challenges to the pinnacle of academia and leadership. In other words, we are here to appreciate a publication from Professor John S.K. Akama. We are proud of you, Professor, for willing to share your biography with us. We thank you for sharing your honest thoughts and reflections. Ladies and gentlemen, each time a book of writing makes into the world, a people, a community, or a nation is given a voice. Poetry, short stories, novels provide a voice, a deep understanding, provide a context, and allow us to live the experience through fictional characters. This is a real character. Without we understanding and the view of the world is what the mainstream media tells us. Every great civilization is grounded on great literature, the culture of storytelling, to remember history through recollection of past events, to teach lessons to younger generation, and to build a national memory. This is why such a book, such effort, such commendable work by Professor Kama and those who contributed to this correction, like Joshua Araka, is a meaningful activity. As the author puts it in his book, if you read the book, he says that perhaps the greatest tragedy that transcends generation is that most human stories and experiences are never told. I like that. He even goes to say that many of these stories entered with the pawns of their would-be storytellers, and as a result, critical experiences and lessons learned by individuals or groups are neither shared nor preserved for present and future generation. We are excited to be supporting this initiative, Professor. When you look at some issues such as weak decision making in communities, like the issue of dropping out of school for border business, or issue of security, the underlying factor is that we are a people with shallow roots, which don't allow for strength in tough times. What gives us deeper roots, permitting us to stand tough times, gives us resilience and more, are stories that provide for us sense of history and identity, who we are, where we have come from. Our journeys have been, and the building of pride in all this. You have read the book, The Gusii of Kenya. You can be able to understand about the Gusii people. But if that book was not written at all, I am very sure the history will be gone. Hence, the critical importance of writing, sharing, and publishing. Professor, we are proud of you for this good work. And then this book we are launching today is an autobiography of a rural boy who weathered his life through extreme challenges. The book reduces, minimizes, or completely removes chasms between rich and the poor. You can be able to understand that whichever background that you come from, you can always ascend to the greatest, to the highest pinnacle of academia, as the book puts it. The book says this, I want to quote, that taking a route of positive thinking, commitment and hard work can lead to success. In other words, we are capable of conquering the challenges we face when guided by determination and commitment. I've just quoted the book, and I encourage each and every one of us to have it as a family asset. I want to say that this is a great gift for all who will read this book. Finally, as an officer of so before I just put that one down, I want to say that this book eliminates prejudices amongst us, such as thinking that the poor, children or people come from poor society cannot make it to the top. People get access to this book and come to an understanding that our background is not a limiting factor to an academia. Finally, as an officer in the Department of Research and Extension, I wish to appreciate Professor Kama for demonstrating research work in his career, despite the time challenges that comes with this position as the CEO of the university. In fact, most of Professor's publication fall under the period of his tenure or the period of his office as the Vice Chancellor. He has demonstrated that research and publication is doable, even when you have very heavy responsibilities. Now, maybe I can just use the quote for I'm about to finish. I want to be very brief because my work is simply to welcome you. I want to quote what Eliud Kipchoge said when he won a marathon in 2019. And this is what he said. It is a great feeling to make history in sports. After Sir Roger Bannister in 1954. That was 2019. I am the happiest man in the world to be the first human to run under 2 hours. And I can tell people that no human is limited. I can paraphrase it for Professor that it is a great feeling to make history in academia. And I am the happiest man in the world to be among the greatest scorers. And I can tell people that no human is limited. This is a challenge to us who are working in various offices. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time. I need to leave some time for the other speakers to help us get a deeper understanding of the book. Today will be fun and running. So a very warm welcome to each and every one of you. If you have any questions, clarification, or just want to say hi, you can find me in Google, OKID, Figshare, Academia, and even in the university website. Thank you very much for listening, and let us welcome Edgar back to take us to the next level. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you, Daktari, for taking us through the opening session. I just want us in a special way to acknowledge and appreciate those of us who are in the room. So I'm going to be mentioning a few people, including the rest of us. And as I mentioned, please to pick them a coffee to appreciate for being here today. Today is a very special day. It's a jovial day. It's a joyous day. We need to be happy. So tutaanza na our friends who are following online, our virtual participants. Tuwapigie makofi tafadhali. Tuwapigie makofi tafadhali. Clap for the physical attendees who are in this room. Tujipigie makofi sisi wote tafadhali. We have Professor Otieno who is also with us. Please, makofi kwake. We have our visiting scholar, Professor Mary Gitau. Tumpigie makofi. We have our KUSU leadership with us, from our Secretary General to the team. Tuwapigie makofi tafadhali. We have our UASU leadership team also present. Tuwapigie makofi tafadhali. We have our deans also present here, our leaders in the academic community. Tuwapigie makofi tafadhali. We have our management team here also represented ably. Tuwapigie makofi tafadhali. We have our journalist who has assisted us and assisted Prof develop this book so keenly. Tumpigie makofi tafadhali. We have our director, Nsemia, who is following online, joining us. He was not able to be with us here today, but he is with us online and listening to what we are saying. Tumpigie makofi tafadhali. We have our chief guest present here today, Professor Bosire. Karibu sana, tuampigie makofi tafadhali. And finally, we have our guest who has made us be here today to listen to his story and get inspired by him. Tafadhali, tusimame tukimpigia makofi tafadhali. A big round of applause as we clap for him and we say, may he be blessed to continue producing knowledge so that we can benefit this generation and the next generation. Thank you so much. Let's have a seat. At this point, we go directly into the literature of the book. I would like to invite our entertainer for a small piece to put us in the mood, put us in the joyous spirit that we want to be in, so that we can be receptive and listen to the knowledge that is coming. And as he dances and as he plays, if you feel that that spirit has also gone extra to you, tafadhali siwamke utingize kidogo, si ndio? Kwa wale wamesema ndio, jipigieni makofa. Asanteni sana. Bwana Mombinya, karibu sana. Let us see what you have for us. Today is an amazing day and we want to celebrate and be happy and laugh and enjoy and above all, learn. Be inspired from a great man who has put down his story for us to be able to read, to understand, and to learn from. So that in the next 10 years, in the next 15 years, maybe I will be the next Professor Akama. Sindio? Simunipigie makofi tafadhali. Asante sana.
Aje wandire igaba pominto, aje wandire igaba pominto, iye baba. Aje wandire igaba baba. Nasinyigu musacha bunandako, nasinyigu musacha bunandako. Ramanga nangu kwa namu ya kolele miremu. Na beirende kikubugeri wemboli, nonye bugibo iremboli tego tenga. Aje wandire igaba pominto, aje busire, aje naya tata. Aje busire, aje naya tata. Aje busire, aje naya tata. Baba. Aje njeke kwa rira kama yuigu tito sende tigi turabandi tukurire nchara. Aje njeke kwa rira kama yuigu tito sende tigi turabandi tukurire nchara. Ngana matoma ukurya, ngana matoma ukurya. Kuboro rumbori go itagutango nengente gusingi tumuntu baba. Baito. Rago mintunga ibona kwasoa, rago mintunga ibona kwasoa, kamo mintunga ibona kwasoa, kuziro mintunga ibona kwasoa. Nina igura basacha ndaroram, nina igura basacha ndaroram. Rero litukoline, rero litukoline. Abageni baiturero nei, karibu abageni turali amatoke, kinense ntobikwa mapakembo baba. Baito. Kama mbuyore ayaneta, kama mbuyore ayamosire mbuyore. Woko iwambu ya bosire, onyenya kango ko bosire. Ndazi ko musori bosire. Ayawandire igaba pominto, kamo minto ngayibona kwasoa, kamo minto ngayibona kwasoa. Nina igura kamurankuna, nina igura kamurankuna. Ajenjike kwa hira kama yuigu tito sende tigi turabandi tukuriri. Nina iguru bosire urarora, nina igura kamurarora, nina iguru bosire ndarora, nina iguru bosire ndarora. Dakitario minto ngaiwasoa, dakitario minto ngaiwasoa, usiro minto ngaibona wasoa. Pastiriti akama nyasauri uru. Twawura nkwani baba nyasauri ukora majati kuna liko ndio mubeno. Ajagwanire igaba abo minto, ajagwanire igaba abo minto. Ahaba murabaito ngaimwasoa, ahaba murabaito ngaimwasoa. Rako minto ngaibona wasoa. Nina igora basacha morankuna, nina igora basacha morankuna, nina igora bosire morankuna, nina igora basacha ndarora, nina igora basacha morankuna, nina igora ba morandarora, nina igora kama morarora. Baito wotire na iwache kurate nina gocha ichura kwanya maigatankura itunda korora bunuko kirigenta ndabu kubuka no tonyegeja mareko baba. Kurate nina gocha churampanya maigatankura tunda korora bunuko kirigenta ndabu kubuka no tonyegeja mareko baba. Ayo nalo lirumbu gambi akamu murabwirizo musacha boli etunya matonto musacha ya rero itimbo lebongirira akama mbuyuli bosire mbuyuli tata bosire mbuya muli tata moko iwambu ya tata obe manyenya kangogo baito obe ndasibe musoli baba nina igora basata torasaba nina igora bamura torasaba hiryo mintunga ibona wasowa hiryo mintunga ibona wasowa herolero litukolinene herolero litukolinene abageni baiturero bagendai karibu abasata karibu abakungu karibu abasata toraja matoke ibenense ntokwa mabakembo baba omakungu nalese omakungu munyakinyo omakungu mubaliriye baba omakungu nalese omakungu munyakinyo omakungu iriye baba ye baba omakungu mubaliri ye baba omakungu mubaliri kamo mintu aje naye tata kamo mintu aje bwaterabu kamo mintu aje naye tata kamo mintu aje naye tata abisi yaho ni bakingo tara baito aje wandire igaba gominto baba imosata kyuju ba gominto imosata kyuju tari kwezi byaga cyubu cyoku kagane mingi acyubu cyoku kagane mingi nameriro nyu ahi abani gatindese abasata narosire akama narosire kuna gwako pali tabwati amaje tabwati ngeje tabwati omoyo ye baba abisi yawo ni bakingo tara abisi yawo ni bakingo tara baito. Thank you my DJ, thank you so much.
I think Mombinya deserves a better round of applause like that. Sindio? Tumpigie makofi kabisa. Kabisa, asante sana. Thank you. Mombinya, we expect some more, so usichoke mdomo tafadhali. Tukiona sugar levels zinashuka, tutakuambia tena uamuke utuinulie juu. Asante sana. At this moment, I want to go straight to enable us listen to the content. And I want to invite our discussants to come on stage, please, and prepare as we hand over the program to them to dissect, engage, and share what this book has. For those of us who have not read that book yet, you will get insights here today that will make you want to go outside there and buy it and go with it. And by the way, for instance, the book is here with us. It is available at 1,800 shillings. And the good thing is we have the author here. So we will have him autograph it for you. And maybe in 30 years, you know, Professor Akama has not stopped growing. Sindio? You never know that in the next cycle, he might end up being the governor and maybe being the president. And in 20 years' time, a book with that autograph, you can imagine how much it will go at. So get his signature now. Siku moja huko mbele, utaonyesha watu picha, hata kama atakuwa nakaa, alikuwa mweupe sana, maybe it will be 10 years from today, utaonyesha watu sema, I was with Professor Akama, I knew him, I have a book with his autograph. Maybe you bought it at 1,800 shillings, it might be 200,000 then, because of his signature, sindio? So we want to grow with him. As he continues growing, we want to be back with him and push him forward. So our discussants, please welcome. I want to invite the lead discussant, Dr. Barasa, to invite the rest so that they can come and take their place and take us through the discussion as we see fit. Daktari, karibu sana. Tumpigie makofi ambaye anakuja.
Our Vice Chancellor, our Deputy Vice Chancellor, registrars, deans of schools, heads of departments, our visitors, good afternoon. We are going to discuss the book briefly, just to give you a snapshot of this journey that Professor Akama has been walking as a small boy, and now he's an adult. So I want to welcome the discussants. Dr. Joash Kerongo, please welcome. He's our registrar, acting registrar academics. Professor Herman Kuriama, welcome. And Dr. George Nyandoro, the director, postgraduate. So as they take their seat, I want to say that Undeterred, a rural boy's journey to the pinnacle of academia, is indeed an epic. It is an epic in the sense that we trace the difficult, unique journey of Professor Akama to the present. The book defines who Professor Akama is, and for sure, he's a legend. The narrative style of the book will expose you to the unique experiences which Professor Akama goes through, both as a child and as an adult. And these, his life experiences, his child experiences are juxtaposed with the growth of our country, Kenya, immediately after independence. The setting of this book is in two places mainly, that is Western Kenya, and also Kisii. And during that time, it was the Nyamira. During that time, it was the large Kisii, but now it is Kisii and Nyamira counties. But we also do have settings from Nairobi and also America. So when we look at this particular book, it gives highlights of critical issues which are bound in the making of the nation as this child grows. So as discussants, we are going to look at these critical issues, bring them to your knowledge, and when you get the text yourself, kindly read, because we will just give you a summary. Some of the critical issues that we are talking about have to do with the contribution to the historical and development of Kenya and the socio-economic development of Gusii land. Another critical issue is the contribution of this book to education. We are introduced to informal education, formal education, and even university and tertiary education. We'd also want to look at leadership and governance aspects which this book bring on board. And finally, if you go to the title, The Undeterred. So what is undeterred? In the undeterred. So to take us through this, I will introduce Dr. George Nyandoro to justify the title, The Undeterred in Undeterred. Welcome, Dr. Nyandoro.
Thank you very much, Dr. Baraza, the Dean, School of Arts and Social Sciences, the Vice Chancellor, sir, who today you are here as an author, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic Affairs, our guest of honor, colleagues who are here, good afternoon. As you've heard, I'm Dr. George Nyandoro. I teach literature, and I'm also the director of postgraduate. But today I'm here as a discussant of this very interesting text, Undeterred. And because we don't have so much time, I'll be going through a very brief discussion on the significance of the title, Undeterred, its meaning and its significance. But before I do that, let me say that this autobiography takes its place of pride in a genre of autobiographies that has been there for a long time since Boswell wrote the biography of Samuel Johnson. As we know, since that time, we have had quite a number of biographies and autobiographies of intellectuals that have been done, but that is the first significant biography that was done and that is historicized. In this country, this autobiography falls in the footprints of University of Nairobi's first Vice Chancellor, who wrote his, James Mungai, who wrote his autobiography, From Simple to Complex. It also falls in the same tradition as other autobiographies, such as the ones that are rolling out by our erudite writer, Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Now, in literary circles, we say that an author is more or less like God because he creates a world. And once he creates that world, he populates it with people, with other living things and objects of the world. Once he has done that, he then retires like God and sits aside in what we call as aesthetic distance so that the audience can interact with the characters of that world. But in an autobiography, the author is closer to the Christian God than the other gods. In the sense that, as you know, the Christian God gave birth to himself through Jesus Christ. And this is basically what an autobiographer does. So there is Professor Akama, who is seated with us in the hall here today. But there is a surrogate whom he gave birth to and embedded him in a world that we are discussing. And the two are significantly different. The one who wrote and the one who's in the text are totally different people. One reflects the other, but one is not the other. One will surely, when the time comes, move on to the next world. But this one has now been left to us for eons of years to come. He will be there, he will be alive, we shall continue to engage with him in the same way we engage with Jesus Christ every single day of our lives. Now, therefore, the point I want to make as I proceed on this is that we need therefore to make that distinction between the author and the narrating character. I shall be referring therefore interchangeably. I'll be saying the narrator, in this case, the character inside there. I'll probably be calling him the narrating character. And probably, again, as we use in literal terms, I'll be calling the hero of our narrative. And therefore, whenever I'll be discussing this character, I will not be talking about the Akama who is in the room today, but the Akama who is in this world that has been created. Now, I would have liked to say something about the family tree, but I know that my colleague is going to say something about it in deep, but I want to mention something. That the world of this autobiography that has been created in what we call as the organizing principle. In literature, we talk of the organizing principle. In other words, what is the key thing that ties together the narratives that have been weaved around that autobiography? This begins in around 1820. I know that our author, or rather, our hero was born in 1959, but the weaving narrative of the organizing principle goes back to 1820. And I will tell you shortly why that is very important. In 1820, in Ngarora War between the Kisi and the Maasai, a young boy was kind of salvaged, and became a spoil of war. This boy was a Maasai, but this boy became the progenitor of the family tree of our hero. That for us is very important. We'll keep that in mind. I'll not go to the other aspects of the family tree, but we'll keep that in mind because I'll be pointing out that our hero, although he says in his autobiography that he is a rural boy's journey, I'll be saying that there's something slightly complex about this character. Complex in the sense of that transcultural, the transcendentalism of cultural limitations. And I'm placing this squarely on the fact that the progenitor of his family tree was a Maasai. So we are talking about a Kisi whose progenitor was basically a Maasai. Now, the organizing principle, therefore, goes around what I might want to ask then in terms of the title, what is this undeterred? And I'll point out that
it is one of those difficult words. Difficult in what sense? Difficult in the sense that it opens up a continuum of time and space. It does not tell us undeterred when. It does not tell us undeterred at what time or where. So it opens up the possibilities so that it is your own sense of imagination that will take you to what deterrences are we saying that our hero was able to transcend. And therefore, I want to say that the resilience here, which was exhibited by this child who was rescued in the Ngarora War, is the aspect of deterrence here is the question of resilience. The question of resilience. This is really basically what is the text about. That the hero of this story is an extremely resilient character who tries to overcome various kinds of bottlenecks, various kinds of challenges, various kinds of obstacles, not just to get into the pinnacle of the academy, as we are told, but also in his own sense of self-discovery as a human being. Now, in this resilience, in some instances, when you take that text to read, you will find drastic aspects of irony. And I'll point out one. Here's a young man, as we saw in that video that we were shown. Here's a young man in a rural place, all right, in a place called Mecheo, all right, in the heartland of Africa, who is confronted by a challenge that he did not create. And what is the challenge? The product of colonial modernity. He goes to school, and the school he's enrolled in is an SDA school. He did not invent SDA, but then somehow he has been taught to be Catholic. He did not invent Catholic, and then he confronts the tensions in the heartland of Africa, the tensions between churches, which were not invented in Africa, which were invented elsewhere, but he's caught up in that mix, and it becomes a problem in terms of his own access to education. But this irony becomes even more interesting. As you realize later on, I'm sure that one of the discussants will be talking about his sojourn in the United States of America, where he went to get his education. He unexpectedly, in the heartland of the Western cosmos, confronts himself with the worst possible aspect of African culture, called sorcery. What can be more ironical? In Africa, he struggles with the colonial modernity, which is Western. In America, he confronts the black side of African culture. That kind of contrast, you can imagine it. Now, this resilience sometimes, therefore, is organized within the context of various sub-themes. And one of the things you're going to find in each time as you read that story is the hero's ability to use the theme of return and retrieval. The theme of return and retrieval. Every time he has to go back to conquer. I'll give you a few examples. And this is why I said the question of the rural boy is rather complex. Because incidentally, our hero was born in a multicultural setup in Kericho. I'm sure those of us who grew up in some age, I'm getting to that age where I can call myself an elder now, we know how Amasamba, Kericho was considered a serious aspect of cosmopolitanism, multiculturalism when we were growing up. People who went out there, Amasamba, they went to Kericho. This is where our boy was born. But for him to be named and to become and to form an identity, he had to return. His mother had to bring him back home as Musamba Mwaye and then give him a name. This is the beginning of the many returnings that we are going to see with our hero. Again, incidentally, when our hero begins he starts his journey in Kericho and confronts all kinds of challenges. He does not know Kiswahili, he does not know English, and this becomes problematic. But then again, for him to find himself, he must return. He returns to Mecheo and has better beginnings. The question of return will be not just physical return, but even return in the sense of his own soul searching. And I'll give you an example of this. You may recall, those of you who have read this text, that at some point after he has successfully graduated from Kenyatta University and he applies to study for a master's degree, you know, in those days there were scholarships, and he had emerged among the top students who qualified for this scholarship, but he cannot be given this scholarship for one reason or the other, because of the systemic failures that we all know about, you know, the corruption, the nepotism, and all those kinds of things. But you know, the question I want you to try and interrogate when you read that text is, what masters was our hero going to study out of Nairobi? It is not geography as you might think. It was a Master of Arts in history. But as things turned out, he ended up in geography, of course, along the way picking up curriculum studies, went into tourism, but he returned philosophically to establish himself as a historian. So these days, sometimes we are not so sure when you talk about Professor Kama, whether he's a geographer, whether he's a historian. You know, the other day we were having a debate which department we will take him to. Should we take him to the Department of Geography or History? So this question of return, going back to reclaim lost ground and conquering it, is the kind of resilience that I'm talking about within the context of the theme of return. But this return sometimes is marked by certain kind of tensions in his life. The return, for instance, that we have from the United States of America was a very unfortunate return after a very unfortunate encounter, you know, which those of you who will read the story probably will come across. You know, he had just had a very nice job, you know, which would have paid him around 700,000 shillings, Kenyan shillings. And then somehow, as things would be, things went left and right, you know, and shortly after, he had to return in a hurry. I will tell you something slight about this on a light note. This return almost cost him his Marion. You know, those days when we had the tyranny of the post office, he returned suddenly from the US, and here is Marion busy writing to the US to get in touch with him, and the letters are getting to no sender, or return to sender for that matter. For 3 months, they couldn't get each other, but I thank God when finally I found that the hero was able to get his Marion. Now, I'll have to move very fast now. Now, the other kinds of resiliences that I want to mention, but mention it very briefly, is that see the author has between different opposites. For instance, they have to mesh between matriarchal patterns of structures of society and the patriarchal ones. And I'll mention here shortly the role of his mother in his life, which because of time, I'm not going to get too much into it. But he does point out that his mother was very, very strong in the kind of vision that made him push to achieve his goals. And I would have liked to say that most heroes who have strong mothers go for the kind of wife who looks like their mother. And I was surprised pleasantly that both the mother and Marion are both called Kwambuka. I don't know if it was an accident, but that was a very pleasant surprise when I read that. Now, because of time, I think that I know that I'm running out of my time, but I want to say this. The hero of this text is very strong in one's comeback, the theme of comeback. When you think he has fallen, that's when he springs forward. When you think he's flat and things have run out of options, that's when he comes out very strongly. And we can see these cases, the issue of the US, but also the many issues I'm not going to get into because of time in terms of his relationship with the colleagues at Moy University, his struggle to be vice chancellor, and sometimes when people thought he's the underdog and so on and so forth. So there's that comeback theme, the kind of, when you think you've put him down, that's when he comes up strongly. And for me, that is the resilience which defines Undeterred. Thank you very much.
At least we are now on the same page, that we know what undeterred means. We are on the same page and we all understand what a character is. So when we talk about a character, we are talking about the character in the book and not the one seated with us today. So allow me to call upon Dr. Kerongo to briefly tell us about the contribution of the book to education. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Professor Jonakam and Professor Wosir and other guests. It's a pleasure to have you around. And allow me to pick from where my brother George has left. Perhaps on some points he has mentioned. It's very interesting to read this book. I don't know whether you have your copy. For 2 weeks, it has given me company in my study room, and at one point we were even disagreeing with my wife because I was staying late trying to get this story. And I want to say that Professor Akama decided to tell a story about himself, but in a very, we call it satirical way or funny. Very, very interesting. And he puts everything in a very plain manner, simple and plain, as crude as it is, the way it is in the village. And I want to pick on what Dr. George said here, that others are like gods. For one simple reason, that others will always, once they have authored some piece, they always immortalize their presence or themselves. And I want to say that this is one piece of work that will go a long way immortalizing Professor John Akama in the world of academia. There's another person who's also immortal, who thinks like he's a god. That is a mathematician. He also uses God's language. Let there be. Apart from the other, that is the other person who thinks he's a god. Now, I want to appreciate the history. The way Professor has narrated this story, a little bit powerful to me. How he connected the events way back to 1820. And they flow so smoothly that I ended up seeing Professor as a Maasai. You'll forgive me, Professor, from the day I'll be saying Soba. Because honestly, I saw his background very clearly and very interestingly. And that teaches us one thing, that as you may want to brag that you are a Kisi, you are a Kalenjin, you are a what? Wait a minute, you don't know your background. Until somebody, maybe others for you, your background, then you tell us who you are. You may not tell which tribe you belong to. So this issue of tribalism has no basis. This story tells us that and breaks that very interestingly. Socrates says one thing about knowledge, because I'm talking about the contribution of this work to education. That knowledge is the ability to differentiate between right and wrong. A very basic definition that you are given at any time of the ability to differentiate between right and wrong. That is the basis of knowledge. So the first contribution I get from this biography is that the author, in giving all the accounts, was able to differentiate between right and wrong. And I appreciate the author for that. We can give him a round of applause of that. In so many instances, he was confronted choosing between right and wrong. And of course, I must appreciate Professor John Akama. I got that you must have been a naughty boy. Forgive me for that. But it's normal for you to grow up as a Kisi young man to be what he has documented here. A little bit naughtiness is necessary for you to learn. That was extremely very honest. And another contribution that I see from this biography, when he is addressing the decades, he has been involved in the world of academia, right from the time of pre-colonial and colonial times and all that. He basically documents the journey, the transformations that we have seen or witnessed through the world of academia. And if you look at that journey, you see a series of changes that have taken place from the 60s to the present. And you'll appreciate that this book will basically take you through what has taken place in our education sector since the 60s to the present. That I noted, as the author, he appreciates the role of an educator, the teacher. And at the same time, he documents how much he owes teachers who are bad examples or bad role models. Allow me to mention that he has not forgotten to mention those teachers who are able to deliver in class. And for one reason or the other, he found himself, the author, not professor, the author found himself leading other students in sending the teacher out of class. Very interesting. And when you look at it, it's not that he was a bad boy, but because he was really yearning to get knowledge. And this is something that can actually motivate the young readers and learn how they can be determined, how they can have resilience in search for education. I also noted the way he above some of the teachers in some school, in some village he mentions, who are literally moral. And he says, academia cannot be combined with such kind of behaviors. And he says even at university, he was able to notice such behaviors from some professors. Allow me to mention that he says that he noted one of his professors at the coast misbehaving with us. As a student, you could confront the professor and tell him that is wrong. That tells you the kind of manner or the kind of author he is and the values he cherishes in search for proper education. And we cannot mix such a kind of vices with education. Allow me also to mention that he has also documented the different scenes in search of academia to give us the picture and the difference, and ultimately tell us that it doesn't matter where you are really searching this knowledge. As long as you are determined, you'll finally come out educated. And this is the message he's giving us, that as long as you are determined, you'll finally earn the education. I'll not exit before I appreciate his documentation at the early pages about his mother. The mother must have been a very dear person to the other. And I want to say that mothers are very special people, and they mentor us. And it's so unfortunate that Professor documents how painful it was to lose the mother. That tells you how close and how loving the mother was to the other. And I must appreciate and agree that many of us in this room have been shaped by the mothers, or the love of our mothers. Ladies and gentlemen, if you ask me to tell you more about this book, I'll speak until the sun sets. If you want to be entertained and learn on how this book contributes to education, have it. You'll see how it will entertain you. You'll see a clear picture. I was seeing like I was watching a movie reading this book, and you'll clearly understand how the author has contributed to the world of academia. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Keronko. When you read this book, you realize that education shapes you in so many ways. You will identify yourself with the author of this book in his search for education and the polished character whom you see today. So get the book and read for yourself. I want to welcome Professor Herman to briefly tell us about the contribution of the book to the historical development of Kenya and the socio-economic development of Gusii land. Welcome, Professor Iriam.
Good afternoon, Professor Kama, my good friend, Professor Buzire, C academic, and all protocols observed. I want to go to the point of return. Like Dr. Nyandoro said, I want to return to Kama the historian. See what Kama the historian tells us in this book. When I was reading this book, Professor Buzire, I remembered our days in Congo. He was my classmate from 5 and 6. And we were two young people from Kisii in a very foreign country. I remember one guy, Hassan Nu, now the chief secretary in sports, because he was afraid that the people are going to kill him. So then, and maybe because the book was written more or less the time we were growing up, I can identify so much with it. But what I want to talk about is how does it contribute to understanding of history? When people read this book, what do they understand about Kenyan history? And I want to pick about 4 themes in this book, and then I'll be done. First of all, when we talk about path, where he was born, Kama was born in Changoi Estate in Kericho. Why did his father go there? Then we understand that during that period, the colonial government wanted the Kenya colony to pay for itself. They didn't want it to depend on England. So what did they do? Is student taxes. Anybody who is able, you have to pay a tax. So then Akama's father and the other people of his age had to look for employment to get money in order to pay what? Pay taxes. So then in a short way, you can understand the institution of taxation in Kenya during that period. The troubles, and then also the issue of forced labor. Because you are working the tea plantations, hard work, minimal wages in order to pay what? To pay your taxes. And then within that path of Akama, you also understand the social cultural organization of the Kisses. The young boy had to be brought back home. For his hair to be done what? Be cut. Part of his placenta to become and be buried at home so that they can connect with the ancestors. So then that even if you are out there, still people knew you are part and parcel of what? Of your home. So you have to come back. Your grandmother and your mother have to cut your first hair before you are even named. And then you also see the naming ceremonies, how the father was happy raising the boy to the son. So then that he interweaves the historical development of his father working in Kericho, as well as the social cultural organization of the Kisses for him to be brought back home. And also then, the same way we understand that within these mashambas, the plantations, the workers who came from various parts of the country started organizing trade unionism. This is the path of trade unionism because these are the people who started resisting the harsh conditions that they were forced into, and they started grouping themselves so that they can agitate for better pay and also for freedom. People like Tom Mboya, these are the kind of people they used to start fighting for independence. So then that's some of the things which, though he doesn't tell them sanctly in the book, but those are the things you get when you read it. The next one is about Mokoro, his great-grandfather. He has been alluded. He was a Maasai. But then he was adopted in Machoge. Then from Machoge, they moved to Getutu. So who is Akama? Is he a Maasai? Is he a Machoge? Is he a Getutu? And now he stays in North Bograng. So who is he? So then as it was said, this thing you say that I'm a pure Kisi, I'm a pure Lui, I'm a pig, it's all hogwash. We don't have pure communities. We are all, if you go back to your ancestral roots, you'll find that you don't belong anywhere. These people you claim that they're your people, they're not your people. Like in the other's case again, his grandmother comes from Ekerenyo in North Mograng. You don't know where the mother of his grandmother comes from. Maybe came from Kipsigis. So then that if you look at the genealogy of your genealogy, both from your paternal side, you'll find that you have this complex web of interconnectedness that you don't find you have the true identity. That you can say, I'm Omogetutu, I'm a Meru, I'm a Nigembe, I'm what? That there is this interconnectedness between the various groups of people. So then that, and then the adventures of Mokoro and Otuori. These were people who were very adventurous who were fighting. In fact, Mokoro comes from Bonchari of Machoge to Getutu because he was a fighter and the people wanted to use him to fight the wars. And then Otuori, the grandfather, goes to war and starts fighting the British. So it also tells us about the contribution that Africans paid in the First World War. But then if you read British books, they don't talk about African participation. You have heard of Commonwealth war graves, you have seen the statues and the monuments the British put up to the foreign soldiers, but you never say anything about the Africans. But here we have an authentic story of really people who participated in the fight against colonialism, and also the people who participated in the fighting for the king, the queen. That time was the king, fighting for the king in the First World War. So then that the idea that we talk that Africans never contributed to what? They never contributed to the fight in the World War is not true. Then there's a very interesting story which also webs tradition and history. Obabi, who is Otuori's elder brother, goes to war on behalf of Otuori. Then when he's killed at the war, Otuori inherits his wife. But then the kids that he gets do not belong to Otuori, but they belong to what? To Obabi. And why did he do that? Because he wanted the lineage of his brother to continue. But yet here, because we call ourselves Christians, Muslims, and what, we condemn wife inheritance. So the wife inheritance is bad, it's primitive, but the essence of that amongst the African tradition was in order to ensure the lineage, that's what continues. Imagine Obabi has been killed in the war, he didn't have any kids, if Otori didn't do what he did, by now you could not have the lineage of what? Of this person who was, and yet he was killed at the war because he had frontiered to go on behalf of what? Of his brother. Otori had been arrested, he was about to be taken, but Obabi says, no, don't go, let me go on what? On your behalf. Then on the other side, Otori says, because you have done this on my behalf, let me do what? Let me take care of your children. So then that the sacrifices of those of both these two brothers tells us the kind of bringing up that culturally they were brought up to be each brother's what? Keeper, that they were to look for each other. Finally, then what I want to look at is circumcision, both male and female. When you read about the ceremonies, what the boys went through, going very early in the morning, anesthesia, which was dipping yourself in the cold water and whatever. But more importantly, when you come back in seclusion, the kind of training that the boys and even the girls received through that seclusion imparted in them very important principles of life, principles of perseverance, principles of looking for one another. In fact, as the author says, it taught important life lessons like perseverance, tenacity, endurance, and courage. So then that circumcision, if both for male and female, was not just a ceremony, a passage of rites, but was an important aspect which kept or which taught the young people the principles of life. Then thereafter, whatever you were doing in your life, there were these things which were imparted. In fact, somewhere in the book, the author says some of the challenges that he faced, then he remembered some of the struggle, the things he was, in fact, he said when he became a Christian, he was surprised at the contradiction. He thought about the lovely Christianhood and whatever, then he remembers, in seclusion, these guys were telling us to fight for yourself and do not do what? Do not just be there and take things come. So then, not that contradiction, but then what it meant that people were nurtured to be self-reliant. In fact, some of the undeterredness maybe came from there, that people were nurtured to be undeterred, that whatever the circumstances you face, to do what you have to take them on. And then the other one is the settlement, their settlement in Borabu. This tells us about because at independence, the Kenya government instituted the Settlement Trustee Fund. And this fund was aimed at assisting Africans to buy land from the party whites. They had its own problems. Maybe it was not used well, but what it shows us that here is a young lady, if I may use that word referring to his mother, a young lady who sees an opportunity and seizes that opportunity and goes to buy land in a white settlement so that she can do what? She can bring her family up there. So then that the Settlement Trustee Fund, to an extent, it played its role of providing land to landless Africans. But whether it was successful or not, that's another thing historians can talk about. Then eventually, when we come to the socio-economic development of Sealand, you can see the kind of work they were doing, growing tea, growing pyrethrum, keeping cattle, and also what caught my eye so much is about the homemade mortuary that was constructed at the demise of his mother. And these are some of the indigenous knowledge systems which we have forgotten. We have now, instead of us taking advantage of that and maybe going back, seeing what used to happen, that those days we didn't have mortuaries, but people people were able to preserve bodies at home for a couple of days before the burial system. So that those are some of the things I think which come up in the book and which are instructive that some of us again should look at and see how we can take that forward. Then, of course, the American experience. The author talks about this experience in America. And historically, to me, is that it shows to us what happens to young African people when they go to foreign land, what happens to them, the culture shock you meet, and how you navigate that shock. And then we start asking ourselves, is it worth to send our children overseas at a certain age, or is it proper that we should put structures here, establish our education systems and whatever, so that our children can grow up here without going outside there and meeting that shocks that they meet. In a nutshell, I think that's what I would say about the development, the contribution that the book makes to the story.
Thank you, Professor Kiriamo. In essence, when we talk about African traditions and customs, it's not so good to condemn them so fast without understanding the function they used to play in our African communities. When you read the book, you will learn more about that. So in the interest of time, quickly I want to take you through the family tree of the author. Kindly project the family tree. And as we look at this family tree, I want to bring on board the leadership and governance, just the outlook of the leadership and governance as presented in the book. Now, when we're talking about leadership, it's all about providing guidance and direction. When we talk about governance, governance has to do with the effectiveness of one's leadership. So the two are intertwined. Cannot divorce leadership from governance. When we talk about these leadership qualities of the author and his governance style at present, how can we link them to the autobiography that is here with us? I want to approach this from two perspectives, that we can link the author's leadership qualities from his lineage and from his academic mentors, religious mentors, and even friends. So when we are looking at his leadership qualities from the lineage, that is the lineage. It's not so clear, but you can see that we have Mokoro. Mokoro was the great-great-grandfather to Otori. Otori, I wish you could use a pointer. Otori is the father to Andrew Akama. Yeah, so we are that. Yeah, Otori. So Otori is a great child to Mokoro. Otori is a brother to Obabi. That Obabi that we've been hearing about, the one who went to World War II on behalf of Otori. Otori married Kemunto. When you look at this Otori is the one who gave birth to Andrew Akama, and Andrew Akama is the father to John Akama. Andrew Akama married Teresia Kwamboka. Teresia Kwamboka, when you look at her lineage, her father was Sorana. So the author is named after his paternal grandfather. Maternal grandfather, thank you. Then Sorana was the son to Mweberi. Mweberi was a great-grandfather, the great-grandfather. Now, when we move down here, you will see that John Akama married Malion Kwamboka, and they both have 3 children. So why are we projecting this family lineage? Our argument is that the leadership qualities that the author exposes can be drawn from these characters from the family. When you read the book, if you look at somebody like a character like Otori, for example. Otori, no, let me start with Mweberi. Mweberi was the great-grandfather to Sorana. Mweberi, what he did, if you read that book, you'll be surprised. And you'll see that he epitomizes the author in so many ways. Mweberi had the only son, Sorana. Sorana decided to join priesthood. And then Mweberi was like, what? If you join priesthood, what will happen to my family? So he went on an epic journey to plead with the parish priest not to allow Sorana join priesthood. And it was not easy when you read the book. That shows how courageous, hardworking, and undeterred Mweberi was. When you look at Mokoro, Mokoro was a Maasai, as you've been told. Mokoro being Otori's great-grandfather and being a Maasai, is described as a seasoned, skilled warrior. And he was left-handed. And that gave him an advantage when they were engaged in war. He was always on the frontier fighting. When you look at the author, Akama, you can see a lot of resemblance with Mokoro. Let's talk about Sorana. Sorana, whom the author named after, was the only son of Mweberi, as I mentioned earlier. He was very religious, very courageous, very hardworking, very enterprising, outgoing, and above all, undeterred. If you have the books with you during your free time, you read page 9, and you'll see that Sorana is a replica of the author. What about Otori? Otori has a lot of resemblance to the author in terms of character and leadership qualities. When you look at Otori's physique, he's described as somebody who was very tall, muscular, athletic, with a deep voice. Can you identify those qualities with the author? The answer is yes. He was also left-handed. This Otori, he fought oppression. He was arrested twice trying to escape from the camps, British camps. It was very dangerous. He escaped twice. He was arrested twice. That shows how undeterred he was, which is also a good leadership quality. I want to quickly talk about Andrew Akama, the father to the author. He was very visionary. If you read the book, he was very visionary. He was the first person in his village to go for adult education, and he even encouraged his brothers to join him. He was a disciplinarian, an African socialist. He would use the money that his wife had saved, that is Teresia, to give handouts to those who didn't have anything. He was also very progressive and hardworking. Now, what is so unique about Andrew Akama is that he's also undeterred. He set on epic journeys to unknown destinations to look for an admission letter for his son, John. The first one was to Kakamega. Another one is when the author did not get his admission letter to Itibo High School. Those were epic journeys, and they indicate how undeterred Andrew was. Let's come to the mother, Teresia Kwamboka. The author describes the mother as a great woman, and you know what that means. When you read the book, you realize that the author identifies himself with the mother so much. So who was this Teresia Kwamboka, whom the author has honored as his heroine She was very hardworking. She was very respectful and discerning. But she was also a person whom you could not easily look down upon. There is an incident in the book that there's a time she had saved a lot of money. She was very enterprising. She had saved a lot of money that they were able to use the savings to purchase land in Mecheo and also keep some cattle. But after some time, the father-in-law one day woke up in the morning and took all the animals and paid dowry for one of his sons. Teresa is very respectful. She kept quiet, but she made a decision. And the decision was to go back to Kericho and join Andrew. So she was very decisive, very intelligent, and very strategic. She was the pillar of the author. Finally, let's look at Marion. Marion Onyambo is the author's wife. When you go through the book from page 209 to 210, you realize that Marion is a great woman. She's a friend to the author. She's very supportive, very disciplined, and forward-looking, and very prayerful and caring. If you go through all those qualities, you realize that there are good qualities expected of any leader. And those are the qualities which we see in the Akama of the day. So lineage plays a very great role when it comes to leadership. And when there is just some new research findings from Harvard University that there is a gene, leadership gene, that is responsible for people who are in leadership positions. How have they become leaders? That it could be inborn. Finally, when you look at academic mentors, that is the nurture side. The book really talks about people who shaped the author's life and leadership. He mentions his teachers in primary and secondary schools, his lecturers at the university, and also his supervisors in America. These mentors have contributed a lot because of their characteristics of being committed, disciplined, which are good qualities of any given leader. We see that the author took a lot from those qualities, and that is what he has exhibited to the present. There are also religious leaders who have mentored the author, the Catholic priests, and the author really appreciates them for shaping their lives, for teaching him to be patient, teaching him to have respect, and above all, teaching him hard work. In terms of governance, we can say that in the book, the author talks about poor leadership and governance. He mentions a few areas where poor governance was exhibited, higher learning institutions, and he condemns that and he gives way forward that for us to embrace a good system of education, for us to work effectively, we need to avoid or shun tribalism, nepotism, corruption, tyranny at work, and we should always embrace respect. So when you look at the finished product, that is the author from the lineage, from his lineage, and from his academic and religious mentors, you can see that we have a finished product who is a leader, who is currently a leader. And you can easily identify with the leadership qualities that his family members exuded and leadership qualities that his academic mentors and religious mentors exhibited. So this finished product, who is John Akama, represents the educated who sacrifice themselves to improve the community and the country. I just want to say that as we chart way forward, we want to say that the autobiography of John Akama is a very unique autobiography, which assists us to ground ourselves in our values, our value system. It also teaches us to shy away from foreign cultures which don't promote social, cultural, which does not promote our values, or which promote decadence, moral decadence. We need to shy away from such. He also advises towards the end that no challenge is unsurmountable. Undeterred, that whenever you are faced with challenges, through focus and discipline and through wise counsel, you will always succeed. And I admire this bit, not because I'm a woman, but because I identify myself with the female characters in the book. He says that women, this is verbatim, that women are the heroines of life. They should be respected and their rights upheld. There are two great women in the author's life. That is Teresia Kwamboka and Marion. Those are the great women in the author's life. And from their experience and from the way they shaped the author's life, he is advocating that we should respect women and let us uphold their rights. Finally, even if we have our individual imperfections, because when the author writes this book, he agrees that he might have his own imperfections. But in as much as we have our individual imperfections, we can still succeed if we get the necessary support from those people who are close to us. And the transformation of the society largely relies on education. Thank you. Thank you so much. Get the book and read. Thank you.
Hiyo makofi haitoshi, si ndio? We will give them another round of applause, and this time round we will do it in a different way. Do we know the 4 factorial? Si ndio? Si tunajua vile inaenda? The 4 factorial. 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 1. Si ndio? Are we ready to go? Can we try and warm our hands? Warm your hands. Warm your hands. They have done an amazing job of giving us the insights that are in the book, and I want us to appreciate them. They have encouraged us to read the book. They have given us insights we don't know. So warm your hands well, and then let's go. 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 1. Okay, that was practice, huh? That was practice. Sasa tunajua sasa vizuri. Wacha tufanye vizuri sasa. To go. Thank you so much. Asante sana, our discussants, for the enticing conversation you've had. You have made us think about the book and think about the man at the same time, because the two are inseparable. Our next presenter is coming in online, but before he comes in and before we leave class, I want to ask a question. I want to give away a book. I'm buying somebody a book. If we've been listening, I have a question. Whoever tells me any of the 2 villages that Professor Akama lived, I am giving you a book. Except how watu hapa mbele. 2 villages, name them. 2 villages that Professor Akama lived. We are amesimama. Sema ya kwanza? Ya kwanza? Prof, ni ukweli? Amepata ya kwanza, ya pili? Nyanzakia, Prof, ni ukweli? Pigia makofi tafadhali. My ushers, please give me a book there. I want to ask one more question to see if we are also listening, so that we see if you can get. There is a sister who inspired Prof and gave them insights in this work, especially about their life in Nyanzakia. What is the name of that sister? There is a sister who inspired Prof and gave him insights about their lives in Nyanzakia. I think Prof was a bit young at that time. What is the name of that sister? Nani anapata nimpatie kitabu? Nani anapata nimpatie kitabu? That is the reason you should read now. Now kitabu iko hapo nje, please let's read. Let's read, and then we continue. So thank you. For those ones who are following online, I want to give credit to Moi University, Department of Literature. They are following keenly, and they have an amazing comment section that they are putting us for us. I also want to encourage those who are online to please put on their put off their video so that the video lag does not become so long. If you put off the video and you leave the audio on, you'll be able to see very, very well. At the moment, I would also like to tell online people that they are asking about the M-Pesa till. If you want to purchase a book remotely, the M-Pesa till is 220686. And once you send the money, it's 1,800 shillings. Please retain the message. We will ask you for the message, and then we will know how you will get the book after that. The M-Pesa till is 220. Our online audience, the M-Pesa till, I will repeat again, it's 220686. You can make your reservation by paying the 1,800 shillings there. Retain that message. We will give you a way to get that book once you show us the message. Thank you. At the moment, Dr. Matunda, I don't know if you can hear me at the moment. I would ask you to say something.
I can hear you well. I can hear you very well. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah, I can. I don't know whether you can hear me. Can you?
We can hear you, but we're just working out the audio issues kidogo. Continue speaking, please.
Yeah, I'm here. Ningekuwa hapo lakini nikachelewa. Can you hear me now? Is that better? Is that any better? Any better? Any better? Are we good?
Go ahead, Daktari.
Are we okay to proceed?
Yes, we are okay. Go
proceed.
ahead.
We can proceed. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can proceed.
Okay, I can see the hall is full there, and there have also been pictures outside, the hall. And it's a pity that I'm not around to feel the warmth that has been shown by all these parties that have showed up for this launch. Formally, my remarks go this way. I guess I want Professor Bosire, Professor Kama, discussants, all attendees. Now, Salimia. Just listening to the discussants talk about the book, you can understand why we at Insemia Publishers fell in love with the book. I think it's one of those landmark titles that we have done. Before I make my formal remarks, let me say that we at Insemia go with this tag and tell stories. Our thinking is that we need to tell our stories in our own language. The thing is that when somebody writes a story about you, it is their story about you. But when we listen and read the story of Professor Kama as written, it is his story in his language about himself. And that's important to us because for many years, people have written about us Africans, they have written about us from outside, and in the end, what they end up projecting is not our story, but their story about us. Our business is global. We are based in Canada and here in Kenya. And I'd like to announce that even when we are a small publishing house, we have recently been honored, I would say honored, where 3 out of 17 titles selected for what they call the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals book club in the continent. 3 of our titles were selected, one of them Lake Power by Sudi, Chogora by Bua, and Sabina Zerenka by Chris Okemo, who you know well, a lecturer in literature at Kisii University. For us, this is important because we think that by looking at stories critically, making sure they are valuable stories that tell stories that make sense, that provide lessons like the lessons we have learned from the discussants, then in the end, we will be consequential even as we grow. Now, before, as I look at the perspective, so what I was asked to speak about is the authors, the publisher's perspective with respect to Undeterred, a lot of boys' journey to the pinnacle of academia. But I must preface my remarks thus, because we have worked with a professor for a long time now, and Kisii University in particular for a long time now. In part because Prof has this passion for culture, for history, for personal stories, for things that matter. He is concerned about leaving a legacy that will inform the future. So we have worked with him in the past in 2 ways. One, through the institution. I must say that Kisii University is perhaps one of the leading institutions with our titles. And those titles, I'm sure that the authors are happy that people have access to them for their studies, for their work. That's important to us. Secondly, as an author himself, Professor has published with us a fair amount. In fact, when we met back in 2017, he walked in with a book that eventually became the Usi of Kenya, and a book that has done very well, I must say, among scholars and other general readers. So that relationship has developed in that, given his passion for this work and the alignment we have with our thinking that our stories need to be told by ourselves, in our language, in the way they should be told. So that was 2017. And then the following year, they came together with Marion, his wife, and they had authored another book called The Boosty Soapstone Industry, which also critically looked at the soapstone industry in Kenya and how it has evolved over years. And the last book we did before we came to Undeterred was the book called The Untold Story of the Bushi of Kenya, Survival Techniques and Resistance to British Colonial Rule. If you listen to all those stories, they are themes of culture, of history, of people, identity, and the people, wanting to put the knowledge together for the generations that exist today and the generations that come. Because remember, when you do a book, when you write a book, the written word doesn't die. There are books that were written centuries old that still form references for works that we are doing today. So for us, our interest is capturing those stories to make sure that posterity will benefit from that which we need and that which we are capable of documenting. And Professor has proved to be at the forefront of documenting this knowledge because he understands, and in one-on-one conversations, he says that there is always something somebody will learn from your experience, from your perspective, from your observations. So, why then would we be interested in publishing such a work? For me, at the helm of Nsemia, the story Professor presents, and in fact, this came out when I read the draft that he sent us first time. And I remember, I think I called him, I told him, over a weekend from Friday to Monday, I never read anything. My interest was good because it spoke about parallels in my journey. It took us to the roots where we came from, the schools where we went to, the things we encountered as kids going to school, challenges that they were at home. The whole thing was like, oh, this is a story I could have written, but Prof has articulated it better, captured it in a way that is communicative, that is that grabs the reader's attention. That's important because those experiences are the experiences that shape us, that define us, that really collectively then define who we become as a community, as a people. Secondly, and Professor Kiyama alluded to this, the work really is historical. If you look at, what he talks about from the days of Kericho, the campaigns between Kanu and Kanu, those are important. So this book is not unidirectional, it's not unidimensional. The book captures substantial material about who we have been as a country, how we have evolved, and where we are. For us at the publishing house, that was important because sometimes historical texts are written in very dry sense. It is very difficult to read them. But when you read it in the context of a child growing up, going to that political rally and listening to political speeches and what turns out to be elections and the differences, those are powerful ways of communicating history. For us, that was really, really important. That because it captures that, and it is an essential thing that people should read. Another aspect is culture, and the discussant, and I remember very well Dr. Barasa talking about this. Culture is really important. Culture is what defines you, more than even the genetics and the lineage as we have seen. The culture, our culture, the rites of passage, the structure of the home is governed. The whole issue of the father is the academic head, media the family head, but in the end there's a matriarch. The matriarch is the power behind the throne, silent and powerful in the end, ends up shaping us who we become. That is really important for us, and we thought that it was important to look at it that way because when you read Professor Kama, and I was reflecting about this after I read that draft, I came to the conclusion that as much as we had taken our father's names, we are really Mama's children, as it were, because mothers really shape us. And that is important because often in our society, we don't give them the prominence, the importance, and the value and the place they should hold as mothers. And then the whole thing of academic journey. I know that Prof didn't mention all the people that fell out of school because of lack of determination or lack of guidance, so on. But that journey through primary school, to secondary school, to high school, to university in Kenya, and later to the USA, and all those, that journey, you don't find it documented in one single book and written from a personal perspective. To us, that's a big, big contribution in terms of the value it brings to the written word out there. And the Prof makes a good contrast. I mean, when you look at his critique of our education system vis-a-vis other education systems out there, that's important because even as we grow as a country and they think about the education that the country needs, it's really important to look at it and say, in what way can we learn from the experiences of others? What is it they're doing that would be injected in the way we run education for the benefit of our country? Things like research, things like mentorship, things like commitment to quality, commitment to excellence. Those are important things, and not a whole lot of people talk about them. So when we saw this work, it was like, oh, I don't know whether you've gone somewhere and found somebody has cooked some really good food and you are drooling, you chinned and that's what we call it. And you find yourself drooling. For us, it was like, what? This is a book we must do. Hmm? And then there is a whole thing about corporate culture. How do we promote people? How do we hire them? Do they serve the purpose, the mission of the organization they are serving, especially public institutions? Do we pick people because we come from the same ethnicities to help them, get access to power, or do we pick them for the purposes of successful running of those institutions? I think those are insightful, and I think it's very brave for Prof to document this, even as he holds a similar position, where some other people may think otherwise in terms of how organizations should be run. So, so you may ask then, so what? First, my answer is that in the book, there's something for everyone. You are an academic, you will find something for yourself. You are someone in school, a younger person, an old person that may want to read the book, you will find something for yourself. Because one, it is written in very clear language that is readable, and there is always lesson to learn. In fact, the discussant had it right when they say the theme of Undeterred, that resilience that you need, is something that rings through the work, that one can learn, that even when you are down, you are not out, that there is opportunity. Secondly, the book is very authentic, and I will tell you why. Because Prof knows is we had a chat with a fair number of his colleagues, whether they were in the university together, people they taught together, people they work with, his profs in the USA. They provided an authentication of the facts in there. So as much as the story is interesting, everything there is authentic. That's important. And I've talked about the book being written with Joshua Kama and Professor Wordsmith. I would call them, what do you call it? People know how to arrange words to say something. It's very pleasant. So that is important. And then there are lessons to learn. One is that tenacity. Secondly, the drive to achieve that. Where you have arrived today, and I'm sure Professor Kama now, as he serves at Kisii University, probably is looking at, so what is the next level to go to in order, to achieve, but also contribute. Those are really important things that you need to be strong to keep going. There are lessons like, being strong. People can make you a punching bag, try to drive you down, but you don't give up just because they appear strong. And we say, that is, if you are weakling, people will keep taking your cattle. They will eat your lunch. So that lesson is really important for us. That don't simply give up because somebody who appears stronger or who seems to have authority is doing something that is not right. So it's really important to think about. Those are lessons that we need to learn. Now, the other thing to think about is that as we move forward, so what is our responsibility as a people? I think we live in a generation that is really privileged. Privileged in that we know how to read, we know how to write, and we owe it to the future. Sometimes I sit back and say, I wish my grandfather, for once, wrote about the Osao War in which he fought. But because he grew at a time when things were passed down orally, and he died before we grew up, we were old enough to document that which he knew. we don't have that benefit of history. So future generations, the people that come after us, our children, our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, should not suffer the scarcity of knowledge, yet we have the opportunity. And I think that Prof's writing this book is really important because future generations can look back and say, what was it like in Professor Kama's time, being born, going to school, going to church, working, and what were the aspirations that people looked up to? What did it take to succeed? To us as a publishing house, those are really important things that we look at, and we are concerned that we capture enough. So, Mogusi says, that means that, that mother who was cooking ugalia, kaleta ugalia moto, and then she wanted to feed the co-wife so that the co-wife doesn't make it. But in the end, it meant that he learned how to cook ugali that was properly cooked. So this is a challenge to us as well. As we celebrate Prof's achievement in doing this autobiography, very valuable autobiography, let's also look at see what inspiration we can garner
towards the end of 2019, Professor again called me. Then now, that's the time he had the intentions of doing his biography. And now this call surprised me because you can tell from my age that I've not chewed a lot of books and experience like Professor Kama. So Professor is a highly traveled person, is a highly experienced person, and he has also gone to so many places, speaking to people. He an author himself, so he was able to do his story. If he wanted, he would have done it on his own. So I got challenged when he told me that us to do this project together. So during our second meeting, and I regarded it to be an examination sort of, I found him with a file and it had several foolscaps. And that is how we started writing the story. So that day alone, we covered quite a lot of information. And his wife was there that day. And she's the one who was the timekeeper. So at around 5, we started at around 10 in the morning. At around 5, she told us that this is enough for the day. So as you've heard that from that book that Marion is a very responsible wife to Professor Kama. And I saw it practically during our project, the time we were taking this project. And I've also learned from Professor Kama that people don't just wake up and find themselves heading universities or doing very serious things. It's a long journey that needs one to persevere and to stay focused. So there were situations where, while we were doing this book, Professor really got carried away, especially when remembering those sad events in his early life, especially when he lost his mother. The way he tells it, you'll think that it has just happened. So, and I think it shows us that parents are very important, and if we have them, then we need to take good care of them. And I also learned from Professor that despite the fact that he is a highly learned person and highly experienced, he is a very humble person again at personal level. The incidents like when my father fell sick while we were doing this project, and the professor was very concerned. He didn't give me ultimatums or timelines that, we have to do this fast. So he gave me time to take care of my father before we proceed with this project. So this another thing that I learned from Professor, that he is a human being at that level. So, and I think all of us who have cool, we should also remember that we are human beings, and there are things that push us to the wall, and we have to find a way of navigating out of that situation. Now, for Professor to allow me to work with him from the late 50s to this time, I think he really trusted me. And, it's not easy for someone to trust you with very personal information including how the family lived, how the challenges that they faced all through, how he lost his letters to Itibo, again to Kakamega, how his father stayed focused and ensured that his son didn't lose track. Actually, one thing that the discussants didn't mention clearly is that professor would have dropped out of school in class 1 because the environment was very hostile. And one decision that his mother made, that of moving out of Nyansakia village to join her husband in Kericho, that is, to me, that is what changed the trajectory that Professor Kama's life was going to take. And so I really wonder when I hear people dismissing ladies, and yet ladies are very powerful and they stay focused even when we as gentlemen lose track. So give these ladies space and they can also play a very important role in life. Now, during the writing of this book, I realized that Prof doesn't overlook details. There are things actually I can say that there are few things forgotten. But here is Professor who is telling me things that happened several decades ago. And that photographic memory is something that we should treasure. And because Professor understands that the information he has in his head cannot help us if it's not transferred to books, I think that is why he's really leading from the front in ensuring that we get as many books as possible. So this book will also motivate us young people, and it will also motivate young scholars. Personally, I feel challenged to find a title behind my name because so far I don't have one. So now that Professor has given me a chance to share a byline with him in his literary works, I think that's a challenge enough. I also wish to say that as a young person and considering Prof's age and experience, perhaps there are situations where I went astray or where we couldn't agree really, but we had to find a way to move forward because he is a writer and I'm also a writer, and we had to choose words in agreement. You have to agree on the kind of words you are using. So there's a lot that goes into co-authoring a book. I believe that Professor will continue to write more books, and will also continue to hold many of us. He'll continue to hold us our hands. He'll hold us and support us so that we leave a mark in this world. Professor, I want to finish here and say that you are an example, and you have set the pace for scholars in this region and beyond. And before I forget, the professor gave me his contact from across the world. These are the contacts that I used to validate sections of the story, including his classmates way back in primary school, high school, college, and college here in Kenya, and also abroad. That was a great honor. And you know, there were situations where I was afraid that those contacts afraid that those contacts may not take those requests from me seriously, but they turned out to be very positive, especially the Europeans and the Americans. They were very positive and they were very prompt. If he tells you that I'll give you that feedback in 2 hours time, then he keeps it 2 hours. So these are some of the things, and perhaps that level and that kind of training is what has made Professor to be who he is. Professor also has a very big dream. I don't know why we avoided it so much while we were discussing this book. Professor has a big dream for this university. And maybe the challenge would be there are situations where your dream is not co-shared with other people. But when you read this book, you get to appreciate that Professor means well for this university, and he needs support to get it where it is supposed to be. Because this mic is misbehaving and my voice is low and I've spoken a lot, let me stop here and thank you so much.
A better round of applause for Joshua tafadhali. He supported Professor in this journey up to where we are. Tumpigie makofi na tunashukuru sana Joshua. Let this not be the last book you're writing or you're helping write your own, and let's also be inspired by your spirit. May I ask one of my ushers to help me remove the seats in front here as we come to the end of the program. We apologize, we are a little bit behind schedule, and we are mindful of the fact that we have a curfew in Kisii, so we will try to get through the last part of the program a little bit quickly, and we ask your indulgence for you to just remain with us to the end as we go through the program. We want to invite our author, and I would like us to invite him in a certain way. I will mention a title that he has, and please, as I finish, clap. I will mention a second one. As I finish, clap. As I do that, he will be coming. Sawa sawa. Musipopiga makofi hata kuja. So can I start? A vice chancellor. Just one clap. A vice chancellor. A vice chancellor. A vice chancellor. A scholar. A scholar. A teacher. A teacher. An administrator. An administrator. A leader. A leader. A mover of change. A mover of change. And lastly, a father. Tumpigie makofi tafadhali. Karibu sana, Prof. Thank you for making sure that we are here today for this great day.
So thank you very much. It's okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, and we apologize for the mishap with the power. Our chief guest, Professor Bosire Monari, my distinguished co-author, Joshua Raka, Dr. Nyanchama Matunda of Ensemia Publicis, the DVC, Academic Affairs, distinguished guests who are here, the discardants, Dr. Barasa, Dr. Nyandoro, Dr. Kriama, Dr. Kerongo, my fellow lecturers who are with us here, students, and our online watchers, our visiting professor, Professor Mary Gitau. Good afternoon. Good afternoon again. First and foremost, I want to thank all the presenters who have been presenting various aspects of my life journey from childhood up to where I am in the present. They have done an excellent job, and probably they have almost said everything. And I would like you to bear with me so that I also say a word or two. When you write your own book, biography, which we wrote with Araka here, sometimes you fear that you might end up exposing yourself a lot, exposing your family, and even exposing your weaknesses. But I said that I had to do that, and I would encourage you that please try to get a copy of the book and make sure that you read through the book. I want to start by saying who are the key individuals in this work. The central people in my work were this gentleman who has just spoken, this young man, Joshua Araka, who is a very promising writer and a journalist. Matunda Nyanjama, a very unique person. This guy, his area is in IT, but is able to do all those things which you have seen described even here in front of us. I have also to appreciate my wife as a key person in this work. And as Araka said, that every aspect when we were doing our interviews, my wife was always around. And indeed, she was a very good timekeeper. Really, as people have said, what was the main reason for me writing this biography? I wanted to tell my story and have it documented to act as an inspiration to the present and the future generations. And I can tell you that the stories I've heard for people who have read this book, they will tell me that the book has got a message for the young people, for the elder people, and the people of all walks of life. So I wanted to document it even for posterity. Issues which are covered in this book concerning my earlier life in the village. Many of us can relate to that kind of experience. And even the younger people, maybe who have not gone through that simple village life, they will get to understand their roots as they relate with their parents. The struggles of my parents in raising me and my fellow siblings in those earlier years comes out very clearly. And here in particular, the role of my mother, Teresia Kwamboka, as the scandals have put it very clearly here, she was a unique person to me. And by the way, and I think she presents many of the women who are unsung heroes in our families, in our communities, and in our countries. This is a lady who worked very hard and basically sacrificed her life for the good of her children. Aspects of my educational experiences, they are very pertinent to particularly to young people. What I see in my book and in myself is that basically I'm a very average person. I don't see myself as being, very unique in any way. But what differentiates me, and I've captured it in the book, is usually the determination, the commitment which I put in whatever I've done throughout my life. In fact, I've seen throughout my life journey, there are people who are far better than me, who appear to be more gifted academically, but because of lack of commitment, they were unable to reach where I've reached. So I want to challenge particularly the young people in this room that with commitment, the sky is not even the limit. I never thought when I was going through primary school as much as I was committed that I will come this far. My university experience, even for the Kisi University students who are here with us here, they will relate with it very well. And here it clearly shows that what kind of friends do you keep around you? You know, you go with the wrong friends, you are completely wasted. My American experience, very interesting. You go to a different culture, their behavior, their values, even the way they do things, the way they relate with one another. So that is clearly captured in this book. Many young people want to aspire to go to overseas to America, but let me tell you that going to America is not going to Canaan. Probably we are going to a country which is more competitive, a country which is more unfriendly than what we have here in our part of the world. My experiences, my work experiences from all the way from a high school teacher, all the way to being a teaching assistant, being a lecturer, professor, all those are very good aspects which people can learn from my life story. This book, as the discussants put it, is well contextualized. I've managed to contextualize my life history within the broader Kenyan history and experience. When you look at my childhood, how I grew up, when you look at my middle life, it really evolves very well and is well contextualized with our Kenyan history and our Kenyan development. I grew up at the time of independence. The experiences which we had at that time, our primary education had a lot of colonial elements. How I went all the way to the university where we experienced the coup d'etat of 1982. All those, I've contextualized them in this particular book, even to the current contemporary time. So it's a highly contextualized book in terms of history, in terms of culture, in terms of education. Issues of socioeconomic development, well presented in the book, and sometimes I wonder whether, as Kenyans, are we really pursuing sustainable development? When you look at our elders, our fathers, our grandfathers, you can say the way they live their lives in terms of culture, in terms of social interaction, their livelihood, there was a lot of sustainability. What about now? We call ourselves the modern people, people of the 21st century. But is the kind of life we are living, is it sustainable? Are we maintaining our values? Are we really sustainably developing as families, as universities, as communities, and as a country? So that issue is very well contextualized in this book. And we keep wondering whether really are we on the right track or we are really getting astray. My dear audience, both in the online and the one we are physically, the discussions have well captured the issue of the pillars. The people were the pillars in my life. I have got to tell you, please, and accept on that one from me, that I wouldn't not have been what I am, was it not because of my late mom, Teresia Kwamboka. This woman was a woman of resilience, was a woman of determination. In fact, they were the opposite with my father. My father, Akama, whom I've taken the name, was an easy go-around kind of person. Akama was more of a socialist, as the scanner said here. Akama would like to spend time with his friends, sharing the little he had with them. Very much contrary to my late mom, who in a way was a lady who was very responsible, a lady who used to conserve resources for the family. And because of that, that is the land we put at Sotik. My education, she was very central on that. And by the time she died, when I was joining university, she had already created a very strong foundation for the family. And even later on, even my father would tell me later on, after my mom had died, that was it not because of my mother, it would be what, he eventually became. Even later, decided even to marry 2 wives. He told me that to marry 1 wife will not compensate for why we are not equal. I was always quarreling with these wives. They wouldn't measure to this great woman who sacrificed her life. My mom, even the sickness which she developed late on life, is related to the kind of work she was doing. She will cultivate the land, planted tea, 2 acres tea alone, single-handedly. She will clear the vegetation. She will build the small houses where we were staying, single-handedly, where my father was merrymaking in Kericho and other places. So you can see, men, you can be lucky. If you have got the right wife, she can easily transform your life positively. So let us appreciate our wives, our mothers, and our sisters. They are the unsung heroes. So that is what I've brought up very well. My 2 grandfathers, Otuori and Sorana, those who are very unique characters. The story of Otuori has been told by the Scandals. The kind of love they had between him and his brother who repressed him and went to war. Otuori, the person who 2 or twice had run away from colonial camps after strangling the whoever was the supervisor. And they will walk for 2 months back to Kitutu until when he was being captured the 3rd round, his brother frontiered to go on his behalf. Those people, the story is very interesting and very unique. And as people have said here, there's nothing. I cannot say that I'm a people Kichi, by the way, as you have heard very clearly. I've got roots in Mansailand. When my parents later came to Nyansaki and near Duoland, there's some Luo blood there. A lot of intermingling. Historians have got it wrong when they talk about Kisis as if they are just a pure group. They talk about the Mansais. Nothing like that. There was a lot of intermingling of people, and if we have to do the DNA of all of us, they will find that Baraza here has got a bit of Mansai blood, a bit of Luo blood in the DNA. It is the colonialists who made us believe that we belong to distinct tribes. My academic mentors, here there are many. All the way I've mentioned them in the book, from primary school. The teacher who taught me mathematics in the primary school. High school, the teacher who taught me there. But when I went to America, I got very good, I was very lucky to link up with some of the best American academicians who also understood Africa. Many of these have been to Kenya. Somebody like Tad Bernard. Tad Bernard was a good man. These are Americans who would sit with me, share a meal with me, and like most of other Americans. Somebody like Sidia Nyamweru, a lady who taught us at Kenyatta University, at that time, Kenyatta campus. Sidia Nyamweru, a lady married to a Kenyan, a lady who was very visionary, and she played a very critical role in making me go to America. Christopher Rand was my academic advisor at PhD level. But you may be surprised that Chris Rand was younger than me in age. I was 2 years older than Chris Grant. The American education system is a very unique one. This guy was identified as an A student when he joined the University of Iowa. And because of that, he was accelerated through the PhD. And within a period of less than 5 years, he had finished his PhD. And for sure, this guy helped me conceptualize my research topic. He was somebody who was very much endured in conceptualization and the issues of analyzing the underlying issues of any research issue. Now, somebody like Robert Maxson, who was written a forward, Gifford Doxey. This was the only American who used to give me money. An American cannot give you money for free. But for one reason or another, this guy, Gifford Doxey, used to give me money. One time, he surprised me by giving me $400. One thing he didn't know, that money, I will later in the evening spend it with my fellow Africans drinking in the nearby township. You know, that is some of those unique aspects which we have managed to mention. I want to finish by saying that one thing which I have also brought up in this biography is the issue of the role of faith. The role of faith or the role of providence. In my life journey, I realized that faith, providence, you can call it, I don't know, God or Satan, they do have an impact in our life bearings. You see, for instance, I was supposed to go to a junior school in Form 1, but I became sick. I was not able to join Form 1 because I was sick. So I had to repeat, class 7. And because of that, I excelled in my primary exam, and this man made me to go to a better school. So basically, faith comes out very clearly. Because of sickness, I ended up going to a better school. The demise of my mother, here is a lady who died relatively young. Her death basically played a very big role in influencing my destiny on how I moved forward with my life. My mom dying at that time made me almost immediately become an adult. I can tell you, when you lose your mom, there's nothing as historical, as touching as when you lose your beloved mother. Even when, for those guys who have lost their mothers when they are older, they can attest to that. It completely changes your life and you will never be the same again. Of course, even also losing your father. Now, the issue when I had applied for masters, to go for masters in the University of Nairobi, that time, Kenyatta campus was part of the University of Nairobi, and I was not admitted there. I didn't get admission. So that unfortunate thing, as you can call it, is what made me find my way to go to America. In the process of me not being admitted, when I went to KU, I met this American professor, Tad Bernard, who was on sabbatical leave at KU, whom we clicked together with Sira Nyamweru, and they managed to arrange for me to go for further studies at Ohio with a scholarship from the American government. So you can see, providence, faith does affect what we become. And I think all of us can relate to that. Now, what I've said here, and I'm finishing now, I've talked about my University experience. Captured, by the way, many pages in that book. My University experience has been one of the most complex experiences I have had in my life. In fact, I can tell you that I have grown in terms of maturity, in terms of relating with people, in terms of my work ethics, by working here at Kisii University. So I can say that I have grown, the time I've been here, I have grown with this university. I have got to say one of the most challenging thing in terms of governance in a university environment or any kind of governance is the diversity of stakeholders you interact with. People with very diverse thinkings. In fact, most of us, the way I've gotten to know us, people, and I'm sorry to say this, everybody about his or her interests first. So, many of the people who interact in my office are talking about what? They are what? I'm sorry to say that human beings are very interesting. What is my interest here? What do I gain from this thing? And in many instances, we don't look at the bigger picture. But at the same time, I've worked with so many visionary people who have really influenced my administrative work here at the university. I've clearly said that, and I've said that managing the expectations and the interests of diverse stakeholders is something very, 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 very challenging. Laying the foundation of a young university in terms of infrastructure, human resource, and academic development, those issues are clearly captured in my biography. Finally, my dear brothers and sisters, I have finished this book, and reflecting now, I think that we are, as a people, we are at the crossroads. I can strongly say that we are at the crossroads, whether we are talking about economically, culturally, politically, environmentally, even with the issue of the corona pandemic. Economically, for instance, we are here as individuals, as Kisii University, as Kenyans. We don't know what tomorrow would be, having for us. We don't know, with the challenges we have of economic challenges coming up from the national levels all the way down to us here, we don't know how tomorrow will look like. So, culturally, I can tell you that we have completely, in one way, changed our way of thinking, our cultural perspectives. We have changed them, not necessarily for the good. And because of that, we are at the crossroads. Politically, what is happening around us? We are totally at the crossroads, the way we behave as individuals, as leaders, as politicians. A very perspective in this book is environmental aspects. I can tell you, as I have grown in this part of the country and Kenya in general, I've seen us destroying our environment. Over the years, we have destroyed the land, we have destroyed the vegetation, like here in the Kisii region. We have planted eucalyptus everywhere. We have fragmented the land into small pieces, and one wonders, where are we going? And you feel that we are at a crossroad. Unless we do something about it, I think there are challenges ahead. Finally now, the corona pandemic. The corona pandemic has compounded everything. And I've mentioned in the book that with the coming in of the pandemic, I think things have been made even more complicated. So I will leave it there. And I thank you very much for being very attentive to what I've said. And I appreciate your coming. Let us all work together. And I challenge all of you, even the students, I challenge you, please tell your own stories. Please write your own autobiographies. Please don't allow other people to tell your story or the story of your family, the story of your country, or the story of other aspects of life. With those many remarks, I thank you very much, and may God praise all of you. Thank you.
Hiyo makofi haitoshi. Hiyo makofi haitoshi. Our VC is from the Nyayo era, so we will give him Nyayo claps. Tunakumbuka mzee Moi vile alikuwa anatupatia makofi. Sasa warm your hands, warm your hands. We are coming to the end of the program. Moja, mbili, tatu. Funga. Usifungue. Usifungue. Thank you, Prof. I will go straight to the end of the program where we are now welcoming our chief guest. Our chief guest is one Professor Bosire Monari Mwebi, who is the chairman of council in Meru University. Professor Mwebi was in early of post-secondary education, both obtained from University of Alberta, Canada. He possesses a Bachelor of Education degree with specialization in economics and history from the University of Kenya. He has been a part of a great many projects in his life, currently running at the moment. Prior to becoming a university professor for 15 years, he was a high school teacher, district inspector of schools, Muranga, and deputy district education officer, Embu Ministry of Education in Kenya. Professor Mwebi has been a member of number of scholarly associations, them including the Canadian Society of Education, the Canadian Institution for Teacher Education, Physical Education and Health Canada, member in Atlantic Interdisciplinary Research Network. Professor Mwembi was also a founder chairperson of Kenya Community in Greater Edmonton in 2003 to 2004. This is an active member association of Kenya in Alberta. We clearly have a very distinguished gentleman today to speak to us. Let us accord him some time and a round of applause as he comes to speak to us. Karibu sana, Professor.
Thank you. You can hear me? Okay. Professor Kama, our guest of focus this afternoon, DVC, Mama Marion, the co-author, our distinguished guest, distinguished prof from the US, members of the faculty, students, good afternoon. When I received a phone call from my friend, Professor Kama, to invite me to this occasion, I didn't say no, I said I'll come. Because Professor Kama is at personal level, we went through together at University of Nairobi, then KU, when the same PhD program, actually did history together. So when I received the book and reading the book, surprisingly, he had a lot of resonance with him. So I asked myself, it's like there was some unseen hand that this is where to attend. I personally grew up in a very poor family. And the time I joined KU in 1980, my dad had passed on in March. That was the first one. And as I was in KU, I was also paying school fees for my siblings, which, again, my colleague, Rosa Kama, was doing the same. So we were all there, but having our cover stories that are part of our lives. So when Prof asked me to come and give a keynote speech, I asked myself, what should I say? How would I put it? Then I asked myself, after we left KU, we went different paths. I went and taught in Rift Valley, in Central, became a district inspector of schools in Muranga. Went to Embassy as a deputy DO. I got a scholarship to study in Canada. Did my master's and PhD. I taught in Canada for 14 years as a professor in Faculty of Education. And then later, the last 3 years, I've been a consultant, was CBC, which curriculum which is being now implemented, and also have been involved in other international consulting. Professor Kama, when you read his book, which he has documented, his academic achievement, his accomplishment, his scholarly work in the academia field, I feel, Prof, it's not just Kenyan professor, vice chancellor, he's a global scholar, educator, and leader. And I should now use this opportunity to share some of experiences of global where Prof sits at that table. And they will definitely sit at the table of global scholars by his track record of publication and the scholarly work. So my topic today will be enhancing university faculty research and innovation capabilities to generate wealth and quality of life in Africa. I want to use this forum not to address Kenyans, but African universities. Thinking of a 21st century university research and innovation. Universities globally are positioned not only to generate knowledge through research, but to synthesize, translate, and exchange. It's what we call KSTE. Knowledge, you generate, you synthesize, you translate so that it can be read by a larger audience, and you exchange. This is common in developed nations mostly, where universities are looked upon to undertake research and innovation that translates ideas into products and also improve the existing ones. That is how most countries are developed, through universities. They are not developed from anywhere. This is where the brains are, very lot of potential. Next. That number 2. Because of the research and innovation culture that exists in developed countries, for example, in Canada, university faculty and graduate students are behind the establishment of industries across Canada, which translate to huge revenue contribution to Canada GDP. For example, University of Toronto contributes about 20% to Canada GDP, which is about 1.8 trillion a year. Now, I try to look at COVID as one example that is challenging countries globally. And one is COVID pandemic and vaccine potential as one of ways we need to address issues. He said that evident most of COVID vaccines are originating from developed countries which have established university research labs and innovation centers. According to recent reporting on COVID, on research status, African universities don't feature in research related to the vaccine. Continue. What is the secret behind? Going very fast. I've said that, as I've just given an example that COVID vaccine is one example that shows how societies are looking upon universities to address this pandemic. And what is the secret that is making those universities to be premier in research and innovation in developed economies? It's no wonder developed countries dominate research and innovation. The secret is primarily on how universities are traditionally set up. Let us look at the faculty and graduate student entering the university and research and culture. Next. I want just take to you. I want to share with you what I went through. That's my journey. And the journey of those who teach in North America. It's very rigorous. Testify with me. Entry is through rigorous tenure track recruitment, usually beginning as assistant professor. Then new faculty or professor, assistant professor, will have access to seat grant to help engage in research. And then expectation of appointment are clearly stated, including research and publication in peer-reviewed journals. Regardless of what you came with into the program, doesn't count. It only counts so employment. It only begins when you start employment. A faculty is appointed usually 2-year contract, renewable for another 2 years on demonstration of accomplishment in research and publication, teaching and service to community. And the publication should be in peer-reviewed journal, which prof, by the time you finished his PhD, you already had a couple. You already qualified to start teaching as an assistant professor. On the 5th year, this is the most, actually, during the 2nd year, if you don't demonstrate that kind of achievement, your contract is terminated. You go home. If you are making well, then you proceed. The next one, then they give you another 2 years. On the 5th year, you apply for tenure track. That's why it's called tenure track appointment. You are on track, tenure. And on the 5th year, I remember this, the 5th year was carrying control with my binders. I couldn't lift them because of the 5 years I've been accumulating. And then here the decision will be made whether to tenure you or you go home. And again, if you do well, you are tenured. So this rigorous research culture, it builds the capacity in research of faculty to continue researching and address the issues in the society. Next. Here, I think there was something on student. Did you jump it? Yeah, student graduate recruitment. This is very important. They are tied to faculty. In most Canadian and North American universities, they only recruit when the student makes a proposal, their research interest, and the research interest is tied to the faculty research interest. So mostly for graduate studies, actually it's the faculty who hires, because who recruits, because you can't recruit unless you have someone who is going to supervise that student. And mostly the students who have been hired or have been recruited, they will come and be part of the faculty, the professors' research, and they will be involved in coming up with the innovations, which then translate into an innovation and link to the industry. And suddenly the industry comes in, and together with the university, you start having industries. I know, like University of Toronto, they receive 100 billion per year of grants, research grants, and they translate it into 50 industries. And those industries, then you see the products in the market. Next. Okay, other strategies that are useful in improving research and innovation is to improve the program content. Let programs be peer reviewed every 5 years so that they are up to date in terms of the market. Improvement in program delivery and pedagogical skills. Like now we are shifting to online platforms, synchronized and asynchronized. Innovation possibly through public and private partnership, that's very important, working with the private sector, and also interface between industries and business. Those are the strengths that we can build on. Move on. That's just go on. I think it's summary. I've met summary. No, just a second here. Innovation. There is need for systematic improvement of strategies in post-secondary institutions, business models. So business models that work with industries to generate revenue streams. Continue. Continue. To build the interface require matching strengths. So our strengths with opportunities, building industrial consortium models, simplifying especially rules of engagement. Instead of having an MOU or a MOA, 10 pages, why not just 1 page? And to do the job. And then this is a very important, enhancing commercialization and the knowledge translation survey among faculty and the student. Faculty should be thinking about business as well as graduate students. Next. 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 I've spoken about it. Let me explain. Creating simple rules of engagement with industry helps streamline their investment in people and research at the universities. Standard templates for contracts, as well as clear policies on overhead and intellectual property. Next. Yeah, this is now where you build the capacity of lecturers. Continue. Now, this is, I think, the final. And in the third, that's was finalized by saying, reading from the front. Here, professor is reading from the front of what I've actually presented. Finally, again, I congratulate Professor Kam for taking the lead on research and innovation front. Professor Kam has tremendous scholarly contributions, evidenced by a number of peer-reviewed publications. And the peer-reviewed publications are, as you know, they are not, a peer-reviewed application takes over 1 year, sometimes even 2 years. You even get impatient. Because it goes to an editorial board, which makes if they don't, there are some content missing, they'll send back and forth. So it's a very rigorous. So to publish, it requires a lot of patience and focus. So books and supervision of students, which is consistent with global expectation of accomplished academia in universities. Teaching faculty of Kisi University should count themselves lucky to have a vice chancellor doubling up as eminent scholar to mentor you to higher heights of the academic pinnacle. If I was teaching here, I'll be really working with my head tall, because it's very rare to get a vice chancellor who has published so much and continues, because that's what universities are established for. It's no secret that current university research and innovations are due to the leadership of a scholar and researcher, vice chancellor. Such a university leadership at the apex is what we need to usher in research and innovation culture, leading to wealth creation and prosperity in Africa. I want to say that wealth is connected with research. Why? I always give example of Bombardier. Bombardier is a company based in Montreal, and they manufacture Bombardier. Those who have flown jumbo jets, that's Bombardier. And one time they had an issue with their sound jets, the sound of the jet, and they wanted it improved. They went to University of McGill in Montreal and asked them, this is the problem we have. What do you need? University of McGill gave them a quotation of some millions of dollars. So McGill was given the contract. They went to the lab where the students are. They worked it out, and they were able to give the kind of product Bombardier needed. And what the outcome of that is that McGill University was able to get millions of dollars, recruited more students to the program, did what they wanted to do, and the Bombardier also raised the fare of their jets, because now they were even more efficient in sound. So that is how wealth comes through university innovation and research. And with that, I want to thank Professor Kama and the team for giving me this opportunity. And I will say that if we were to vote one of the best university vice chancellor who doubles as a researcher, we have Professor Kama here. And here as a chairman of a university, Mary University, I'll tell also my council and that we should also have a partnership with the Kisi University, so that together we can support our universities to solve some of the emerging issues in Kenya and Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. These days with Corona, you know, you can meet somebody and you don't actually meet them. When you meet them next time, they're looking at you like, you know, we met in Kisi, but kumbe, it's not your fault. Half of the face was covered. Thank you, Prof. Our pleasure to receive and speak and listen to you today. I want us to give him a round of applause. Si tunakumbuka Karabanda Seniorita, si tunaijua. Tupatie Prof. Karabanda Seniorita, akienda kwa university yake, maybe he can teach them also what he learned in Kisi, si ndio? Haya, Karabanda. Asante sana. We will quickly move to the end of our session, the final session for this program. And at this time, I would like to invite, I hope my ushers out there, they are ready. And everything is also ready for the launching part. I will ask you to come in. At the moment, I will ask Professor Akama, I will ask also Professor Bosire, I will ask Bwana Joshua, and I will also ask Mama Malion to come over this side so that we can commence the program for unlaunching of the book officially. I am looking for Makasi tafadhali, my ushers. Ma'am Makasi koko nje. Please come with it so that we can officially launch the book and start celebrating and start reading officially what we have today. I would like the scissors, tafadhali, the person who has the scissors to come quickly as we complete the program. Kama mnanisikia, my ushers, the person who has the scissors, tafadhali. Oh yeah, it is here. Thank you. Prof, you will hold this. We will cut it from this side, so I'll ask us to step down together. We will have Prof and Bosire on one side, and then Mama Malian on the other side. This is the moment before Prof cuts the ribbon. I would ask my technical person to put up something there. We will count down. As we count down, we will continue. So Prof, you will cut ribbon, and then we will open the book. You will carry it. We will come here in front, and then you will show it to the people as we take photos. So we are looking there. My technical person, we want us to count down to 10, from 10 to 1, and I want you to count with me. When you see the screen there, stop it there. Stop it there. It is showing from 10. Si tunaona sisi wote? Tunaona huko? Tunaona huko? Julia too, my technical person, just hold it there. Prof, we are counting down before you cut down. So, tuende pamoja. 10, 9, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof. You can cut and then you open. Tupige makofi yakiendelea tafadhali. Kata hapa. Thank you. Makofi tafadhali. Please, Prof, hold one side and Prof, hold the other side. Ma'am, I would say you be on the right side of Prof and Joshua just here. Thank you so much. Let's tuwapige makofi. This is a wonderful day. This is a wonderful day. Can I have the people who are helping me with the cake to come in so that we can finish that program quickly? Those who are helping with the cake to come in quickly. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Makofi. Siku njema. It's a wonderful day. Makofi. It's a wonderful day. Makofi tafadhali. Our chefs at the end, be ready to start serving the tea. Nataka kuanza. Request you to come on top. Our guests. wakiendelea kukata. Our chefs, I hope you are getting ready.
Kata keki kata, oh kata,
I hope you are getting ready.
keki ya jina lako, walisha na wenzako, kwa ajili yako, kata umiliki, kata,
Time to celebrate.
oh kata,
Time to have fun. It's time to go and start. We appreciate. It is a good time and we want to enjoy. Our chefs at the end, I hope you are getting ready.
kata keki kata, oh kata, kata umiliki ya jina lako, walisha na wenzako, kwa ajili yako, kata umiliki, kata, oh kata, kata nikuone, kata umiliki,
Bwana DVC, join us. Karibuni sana. Our two DVCs, please welcome. We appreciate it's a good day. We are celebrating and we are enjoying and we are having fun. Jali penye uko. Penye uko, celebrate with us. Enjoy. And you can begin serving the tea one by one. So much. Tunashukuru sana. We appreciate this day. And we thank you for being with us here and sharing this wonderful moment. Thank you, Prof, for bringing us together. Thank you, Joshua, for supporting Prof in writing this book. Thank you, Professor Bosire, being here today. Thank you, Mam Malion, for supporting Prof through the entire journey. We appreciate you and we thank you as we continue with this journey. Tunashukuru sana. Our DVCs, karibuni sana. Asante. Karibu. Time to share. Be happy. Enjoy what we have. Those ones who are on the floor. Thank you. Tunashukuru sana. It's a wonderful day. It's a day to have fun. And a good day to enjoy. We have added to the body of Machaia kabisa. Siku ya kufurahi. Leo njema. It's a good day. And we appreciate. Wachia. Thank you. It is a good day. We are happy. Tumefurahia. Madam Dean. Madam Dean. Karibia. We know you know how to shake it. Karibia, Madam Dean. Madam Dean. Dr. Gladys. Karibu. Let us celebrate together. Let us stand. Let us enjoy. Let us waiting to get sick. Malizia. Hapo sawa. Hapo sawa.
naye tata okoi wambu ya tata okoi wambu ya.
May I ask us to continue getting back to our seats so that we can see a program? Let's continue getting back to our seats. Pole pole. Tucheze tukienda kwa viti. Tucheze. Achilia. Furahia. Hapo sawa. Yeah. It's a wonderful day. It's a wonderful day. We are happy. We are blessed. Hapo sawa. Wazee wanaenda chini na wewe sasa. Hapo sawa. Hapo sawa. Thank you. Thank you. Karibia viti zetu, karibia viti Asanteni sana. Asanteni sana. Tunashukuru sana. We thank you. We are appreciative. Asante. Asante. Kabisa. Asante sana. Thank you. Let's get back to the seats as we are served tea and snacks, and as also we receive the vote of thanks for this wonderful day. And we close the ceremony with a closing prayer. Tafadhali, may I ask us to take our seats? Tafadhali, where you are, there is a seat. Take your seat, and then we do the vote of thanks. Where we are, tafadhali, just take your seats quickly. Wakituserve chai. Let us take our seats quickly, and then we do the vote of thanks as we close with a wording prayer. Tafadhali daktari, let's sit down, tukae chini. Let's take our seats for just 1 minute for a quick vote of thanks, and then we close with a word of prayer. Thank you so much. As we finalize, let's just take our seats for 1 more minute for a quick vote of thanks, and then we close with a word of prayer. Tunashukuru sana. We thank you for the joy. That is the happiness that we are looking for as we add on to the body of knowledge in this world, in this university, in this country. We appreciate it. At this moment, let me hand it over to Dr. Gladys for the vote of thanks, and then we close with a word of prayer.
Thank you so much, MC. My work is very simple, and I take this opportunity to first and foremost give honor and glory to our God. Why? The book we are launching is an example, or we have just launched, is an example of God's divine guidance. Professor termed it providence and care over our hero, Professor John Akama. God's sovereignty and power are seen throughout this book. Although we may question certain circumstances in our lives, we must have faith that God is in control, working through both pleasant and difficult times so that we can serve him effectively and fulfill the purpose for which he has created us. Secondly, I'd like to also take the opportunity to give a great applause to Professor John Sorana Akama, who has made us to be here today. Dr. Nyandoro, Dr. Margaret Baraza, and the rest would tell us that drama, power, romance, intrigue, this is the stuff of which best-selling novels are made of. But far from a modern piece of fiction, the words in the book we have just launched describe a true story lived and written by the owner, Professor John Akama. More than entertaining reading, it is a story of profound resilience, focus, and determination to rise above all odds to the pinnacle of academia. For this and more, we celebrate and applaud you, Professor Akama. We will also want to appreciate in absentia the parents of Professor Akama, that is Andrew Akama and Mama Teresia Kwamboka. They played a big role. And when we had our the moderators speaking about what they read, and Professor has shown it or has testified about it, that they played a very big role. They passed on the traits. So in absentia, we really appreciate them. We also appreciate the dear wife, Marion Kwamboka, for standing strong and working with the professor through the journey. And we know that although Joshua indicated that professor remembers details, but we know that men at times, some details escape men because ladies are wired to be detailed. So Marion, we celebrate you. We also celebrate your children for having stood with you. That is Orango, Yakoinania, and Otuori. If they were not there and given you the motivation and the peace that you required, putting up together such a piece would have not been easy. We also want to appreciate the siblings of Professor Akama, because at times he was younger that he could not even remember what happened. But because of the support they gave, Professor has brought out this piece very well. We also want to appreciate Joshua Araka, a journalist, for standing with Professor. You have testified, and he is your mentor. Keep it up. We appreciate you. We appreciate our chief guest, Professor Bosire Monari Mwebi, who has clearly, although time was short, it has come out very clear that research, synthesis, translation, and exchange of all that we do will create wealth for our nation. And this is what Professor has done. And people would ask, can anything good come out of Nyansakia? Indeed, it is a testimony that something good has already come out of Nyansakia. Also, I want to appreciate the discussants, that is Dr. Barasa, Dr. Nyandoro, Dr. Joash Kerongo, Professor Haman Kiriama, for discussing the book so clearly, an indication that you took your time. And out of the discussion, you have created a desire in each and every participant to go and read in between the lines so that we can verify, so that we can understand it by ourselves. I also want to appreciate Dr. Roger Satebe, who gave us the opening prayer. We also want to appreciate the administrators of Kisii University, our DVCs, our registrars, our deans, our directors who have made it to be here this day. We also want to appreciate all the student leaders, the student fraternity, and the support staff who have remained silent and patient to have brought us to the close of this great day. We also want to appreciate our viewers who have been following this great, phenomenal occasion online. And in line with that, we want to appreciate our media team who have created various platforms to really mobilize people to come and attend this event. We appreciate you. We also want to appreciate the entertainment team led by Mumbinya. Thank you so much for those good pieces. It is nice. We also want to appreciate those people who prepared this particular venue. It took some, you will agree with me, we have been here long enough, but this place, particularly today, looks awesome. We want to appreciate you. We also want to appreciate those people who took their time to prepare the snacks that we are enjoying, the cake and all that. We also want to appreciate so much Dr. Nyanchama Matunda, who was with us online. He has worked with the professor in his education, and he is a good friend of this institution. Nyanchama and your team, we really appreciate you for the support you're giving us. We also want to appreciate our visiting professor, Professor Mary Gitau, for being with us. Thank you. You love this institution. We appreciate you. All other invited guests and friends of this institution, we love you and we appreciate you for the out. We have realized that all of us can rise above challenges that may come our way. So it is an inspiration, and we want to thank God. And Professor Akama has lived through to the philosophy that publish or you perish. He is leading by example. So we are encouraged, all of us, to follow suit. With those very many remarks, feel welcome, feel appreciated. May God bless you and take you home safely. Kindly ensure that you have had a snack so that you go home before you are caught up with the curfew. Allow me to return this mic to our MC, Edgar. God bless you for the good work you have done all through from the moment you started online advertising and telling us to attend this event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Dane. Asante sana, Daktari. Quick note, we go for the closing prayer. Those who are watching online, I just want to remind you, for those who want to purchase the book, you can send to M-Pesa till 220686 and then send us the message. We will make sure the book gets to you. We have several people whose book have not been autographed yet, lecturers who have bought and they have the book. Don't worry, we are going to organize for an engagement. You can just bring it at the Public Relations Office, and then we will get that book to the Vice Chancellor for that autograph, and then we get back the book to you. So if you've not had the opportunity for your book to be autographed today, you have nothing to worry about. We will make sure that book is autographed once you bring it to the Public Relations Office. At this time, may I invite Brother Paul to come and offer a closing word of prayer as we take our tea, snacks, and then you can depart at your own pleasure. The Vice Chancellor, in the meantime, as we continue with this, he will continue autographing as many as he can. And if he gets tired, let's allow him and we will get those to him. We can arise for a closing word of prayer.
Let's rise up for a word of prayer. Let's bow down. We thank you, God, for the fact that you have been with us since we began this journey, which was begun long, long ago, as we have been told even by the discussants. I pray that the biggest version lesson we can be able to learn, that we may ever be undeterred in everything that we do. We thank you for the author, the co-author, and all the stakeholders that have made this function to be a success. We even pray that even those who have taken the books with them, that the stories can be an inspiration to their lives. I pray that you be with us even as we go amid the pandemic, that you be able to protect each and every one of us. For in your holy name, we pray and give thanks.
Thank you. Remember, we have some tea and snacks behind there. Get served. Have something to eat before you exit. Let's have some music.